When creating a light novel, one of the most important elements is writing a good first chapter. Your first chapter is the very first glimpse that your audience will ever have of your world and your characters, so it's important that your first chapter gets your readers engaged in the story. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can create a perfect first chapter that will not only get your audience engaged, but will also make them wanting the next chapter. The very first thing you want to do when you begin creating your first chapter is you want to know your chapter's purpose. This is important not only for the first chapter, but for every chapter you create. You really want to understand what the purpose of this chapter is, why you are creating it, and usually this boils down to what the character's goals are in this chapter. Every chapter should provide more character development or provide more information about the world that the characters are in. So, what you really want to ask yourself is, what should the reader want by the end of this chapter? They should always want something, and this is what's going to keep your readers wanting to read more to see what will happen next. So some examples of this might be that in the first chapter, they might want to see the protagonist go on their adventure. They might want to see what a character is hiding. They might want to see a certain revenge arc against a particular villain. They might want to know why a sudden, unexpected event occurred. So curiosity is what keeps the readers interested. So when you build your first chapter, try to ensure that you end it on a note that builds curiosity and makes the readers want more. The next thing you want to do in your first chapter is obviously introduce your protagonist. The protagonist is the main character in your story. They're the one driving the plot. So readers really want to see who this character is and why they should root for this character. So your protagonist should be introduced doing something that reveals who they are in the story naturally. So rather than describing them, show how this character is making a decision in a scene. Show them how they're reacting in a situation under pressure. Show what characters and what environment and what goal matters to them in the story. These are the things that are going to make readers invested in this particular character. It's not when you introduce this character in a way that tells the audience who they are. It's when they can see for themselves who this character is and why this character is important in the story. Number 3 is that you should establish your protagonist's goal. As I mentioned before, the goal of the protagonist is usually the main goal of the story. Your protagonist should want something, and they should have a strong reason why this is important. So this doesn't have to be a huge goal either, and of course this depends on the genre as well. It might be to protect someone, it might be to escape from a potentially dangerous situation, it could be to go on an adventure or join an adventuring guild. There's so many different things that your protagonist could want, but the main thing is not what they want, it's more why do they want this thing and why is it important? Which brings us to step 4, which is introducing the main conflict. So now you have the protagonist and you have their main goal. In the beginning of the chapter, you start to introduce this, you start to reveal your setting, and you start to reveal your main characters and why your main character's goal is important. So once we have this, we want to introduce a main conflict. The main conflict should be placed somewhere in the first chapter to add an obstacle in your protagonist's journey. So to give an example of conflict, and this also depends on genre, it could be a particular villain character, it could be a rival, it could be some kind of misunderstanding or some kind of personal weakness. So all of these little conflicts can add up to a bigger conflict in the story. It's important to note that in the first chapter, you don't need to reveal the entire grand conflict of the story. You don't need to reveal the villain just here yet, unless you would like to. But in this point, you really just want to reveal a problem that is the main obstacle from your character achieving this goal. So for example, if you're presenting an environment that is dangerous and hostile, like a post-apocalyptic environment where there might be zombies, then this obviously poses a great threat to your characters. Maybe your characters are just trying to help the others around them, but the environment itself is a major conflict, and this can really make your readers invested to see how they would survive this dangerous situation. Step 5 is introduce the world naturally. So in the previous example, I was saying how you could have the character in a zombie apocalypse. This is a good example of how the world can be introduced naturally through the character's daily life. Whether your character is going to school or college, or if they go to work, or if they're in a unique fantasy or science fiction environment, all of these worlds can be introduced naturally. You don't need to stop the story and then explain the details. Show how your character lives their daily life through the first chapter, all of their actions that they take within that chapter, and that's going to introduce your audience to the world more naturally. Step 6 is introducing supporting characters slowly. So in your first chapter is really all about introducing your settings, your main protagonist or other important characters, and the main goals. So you are giving your audience a glimpse of the world. Basically, you are giving them a trial run of your world and story to see if they would be interested in reading more. You have to make sure that in your first chapter, you provide the information that is necessary to keep them engaged and wanting chapter 2. So when you introduce supporting characters, not all of your supporting characters should be introduced in the first chapter, because the more characters you introduce in chapter 1, the harder it will be to remember all of these characters. So when you are introducing characters in your first chapter, I recommend 1 to 3 important characters, including the protagonist. So give each character a clear and distinct purpose in this introduction. Now, in this, I'm not necessarily meaning that you can't have side characters. Obviously, if your character is navigating the world, they might meet other characters along the way. But what I really mean is significant characters in your story. If you're introducing your main villain, and you're introducing a love interest, and you're introducing a rival character, and the protagonist all in the first chapter, it may start to feel a little overwhelming. But if you keep it narrowed down to the protagonist and maybe the main rival, this will begin the interesting first chapter and give your audience a taste of the world you're creating. Now, we've gone through the first chapter. We've begun by introducing the setting throughout your character's daily life, showing who your character is, what their goal is, and why this goal is important. We've also shown who the other major characters are in this character's life. In step number 7, we need to raise the stakes. So this is where it becomes important. This is where we keep the audience engaged with what's going to happen next. By the middle of the chapter, so you start off the chapter revealing your character's life, but by the middle, something unexpected should happen. Your character, who has been living their ordinary daily life, suddenly something unexpected happens which pushes them out of their comfort zone. So maybe they discover something unexpected. Maybe they meet a character who turns what they believed completely around. Maybe they discover an unexpected item or element. Maybe someone asks them to go on a journey, for example. So there are so many different unexpected events that could happen, but the most important thing you need to consider is think about what your character wants and what could be the most challenging thing that could happen to them at that particular point in time. That challenging event is what should happen in the first chapter. It should completely turn your protagonist's world around, because now the life that they knew or thought they understood has now been completely turned in a different direction. And this is what will suddenly spark the audience's interest and make them curious to know what will happen. So step 8, we've reached the end of the chapter, we want to end with a question. So your ending on your first chapter should not feel finished. It should feel like it leads into a curiosity building situation. So your character has now witnessed an event, an unexpected event that has turned everything they thought they knew around. By the end of the chapter, you need to make the readers ask questions. So, for example, maybe the reader has to go on a new journey, but they don't know who has invited them. They don't even know if this person has their best interests at heart. This person could be a villain for all they know. For whatever reason, they have to go on this journey. Maybe it's to find something or to help someone, but they don't know if they could be walking into a trap. And so at the end of the chapter, you leave the readers with the question, well, what if the protagonist is actually walking into a trap? What if this is actually dangerous? You create foreshadowing that makes it look like this situation could potentially end on a dangerous note. Or using the zombie apocalypse idea, maybe the character feels like they are suddenly in a safe place. At the end of the first chapter, they get to a bunker, but then an unexpected event happens. Maybe they realize that there's actually zombies all over the place and now they need to escape, but you leave it at the point where they have not escaped yet, they have not reached safety. And the readers will wonder, well, is this character going to get out safely? There doesn't seem to be any escape routes. How are they going to make it out of this challenging situation? You need to leave the readers desperate to know what is going to happen. So throughout the first chapter, you need to ensure that you make your audience care about your protagonist and care about what's going to happen to them. And this is why it's so important to show them in their daily life, to show their goals and to show why these goals are important. And then once you have shown this protagonist in the first chapter, then you can lead it into a situation where you create an unexpected event that turns their life around. And this can also be presented in different ways. The 2 examples I showed The two examples I described show more of what would happen in more of a shonen series, but you can definitely do this for shoujo or slice of life as well. In a shoujo, ending the scene on a cliffhanger might be that an unexpected rival appears, or it might mean that the character receives a love letter but they don't know who it's from. In slice of life, maybe this might be that a character is really nervous to join a new school, but then at the end of the chapter, they meet someone else who's also really nervous. So you introduce two characters, but you introduce a setting which will be slightly unexpected. This unexpected nature can be included no matter what genre or style of story you're telling. So this is how you create a great first chapter. You want to ensure that you build up that chapter throughout. What you want to avoid in your first chapter is having a first chapter that is just purely for character and world development, but leaving your cliffhangers and everything else that drives the plot till the second chapter. You want to ensure that you show your character's ordinary life and show what leads up to that unexpected event, but you hit it with the unexpected event at the end of the first chapter, and that's going to keep your readers invested and wanting to know more. If you feel completely stuck on building your first chapter, here is a formula that I like to use that really helps me build it from start to finish. And it's introduce the protagonist, show their normal life, reveal what they want, introduce a problem, make the problem worse, and end on a cliffhanger. And for a good first chapter, that should be enough to get your readers interested. So if you've already created your first chapter, I recommend going back and reviewing your first chapter again, seeing if it follows this format and structure. Because if you follow this format, it's much more likely that readers will be engaged in your story and want the next chapter and to read more and learn about your world as soon as possible. When creating chapter 1, the most important element is keeping readers curious. You want to ensure that your plot makes them engaged with who your character is and wanting to see what happens to your character next. Thank you so much for watching my video today, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what kind of first chapter you're creating, because I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'm sure others would love to hear your thoughts too. If you want to take your storytelling to the next level, check out my plot planners available on my website. I have a 6-step story structure dedicated to novel writers, and there's a pro version and a more simplistic version as well, which can help you get the ideas out of your mind and onto the page. So I highly recommend it if you want to take your story to the next level. And again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!